Now, I've conducted some unscientific polling on this initiative, and I found that every single person, irrespective of age, said that they would vote for it. That was not a surprising result. All we need to do is get this measure on the ballot, and we will immediately, or in the future, be freed from our servitude on the government plantation. We will no longer be slaves. We will be free. Hallelujah. That'll be a great day, and that day is coming. So now, after people answer that they will vote for the measure, some will immediately ask me, where will the government get the money from? You know, the money that they won't get from the freed slaves? I just shake my head in disbelief to myself, of course. I don't say it. But, so here are people in a state of slavery, and when they're presented with an opportunity to get out of the slavery, their first reaction is one of concern for their master. They have more concern and sympathy for the welfare of their master than they do for their own welfare. You know, what's wrong with people that this should be such a prevalently common reaction? I don't get it. Anyway, generally my response to the question is to ask, why should the government be taking the money in the first place? The government takes the money by coercion and gives it to whomever they please. Since the government is being taken by coercion at gunpoint, the government is actually stealing the money from the state's residents. However, they don't call it steal. No. They use a euphemism to mask the fact that they're stealing the money. The euphemism they use is taxation. That's why the California Freedom from Slavery Act deals with the elimination of taxes. Now let's take a look at the magnitude of the tax relief provided by the California Freedom from Slavery Act in comparison to the overall amount of taxation dispossessed California taxpayers or slaves are subjected to. The state legislative analyst and director of finance estimates that the fiscal impact on state government due to this initiative would be annual revenue losses of $15 billion or more due to new exemptions on personal income and estate taxation, and annual local government revenue losses of $5 billion to $10 billion due to new exemptions on property taxes. This is a total of $20 to $25 billion per year. Now this may seem a high number, considering that the state alone has been rumored to be in short, you know, in the neighborhood of that amount this year. But in historical context, you can see that the state should have a surplus, not such a large deficit. So to illustrate this point, let's look at the state budget expenditures over the past. Now here's a plain chart, simple chart that I created using Excel and data from the California Director of Finance's website, specifically charts A-1 and B. So there are three plots that build upon each other. The lower plot is the general, it's called the general fund expenditures. The middle plot is called the budget expenditures, and that includes items that must be spent in specific ways. The top plot is the total of all expenditures, and that's created by adding the expenditures funded by the federal, underwritten by federal funding. Notice that the $15 billion revenue loss due to this measure, predicted by the legislative analyst, is only 12% of the budget expenditures and only 7% of the total expenditures. It's hardly a bump in the road. Don't you think the state can find 12% waste in the budget to eliminate? But let's look at this in a couple of other ways. Starting in 2004, the budget expenditures increased $15 billion, the amount that's going to be saved due to the initiative, increased that amount every 2 years. So in other words, all the legislators have to do is just freeze the budget. They can easily squeeze out $15 billion, no problem. But let's look deeper. In 1980, the budget expenditures were $21 billion. 21 billion. 30 years later, in fiscal year ending 2010, there'll be approximately $126 billion, a factor of 6 increase. Now, you might be thinking that the cost of everything is up due to inflation. Well, let's take a look at this. A factor of 6 growth in 30 years represents an annual rate of increase of 6.2%. And if you know anything about inflation, you'll quickly see that 6.2% is a significantly excessive annual rate of increase, because the rate of inflation is typically 3% per year. That's a factor of 2.43 times in growth, not 6 times. So if the budget had grown at the rate of inflation, then the 2010 budget expenditure would be 51 billion, not 126, based upon the 1980 baseline of 21 billion. So this means the budget expenditure is 75 billion higher than it should be after inflation is taken into account. So you might respond by saying that the increase is due to the population increase over the last 30 years. Well, you can look at that question too. But first, let's look at some other interesting data. And I apologize if I might bore you here. Some of you might be interested. But so let's click on part 3 of the video for more facts about the California Freedom from Slavery Act. We'll see you over there.